their first meetings in November. So I'll keep you apprised, but right now it looks as though we will remain remote until January. Alto Soccer Club will be starting their annual seasonal lighting at Coverley Turf Field on November 7th, and they will have use of the lights for practices Monday through Friday from 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. through March 11th. And they're going to send, recreation staff will send notices to all the surrounding residents in early October. The field brokering meeting for the winter and spring 2022 will be held in late October and early November. We'll update on special events. The annual Moonlight Run event last Friday, September 17th, went very well and had a great turnout. We don't have final numbers yet, but the pre-registration was around 1,800 signups. And the next special event that's coming up is the second annual Jaco Jaunt event. This will be held on Friday, October 29th, 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Lytton Plaza. There's a pre-event workshop from 3:30 to 5:30 that day for participants to receive and decorate pumpkins to submit in the Jaunt event. And there'll be 5 $75 gift cards for category winners donated by the Palo Recreation Foundation. And winners will be selected by the event participants. Participants can fill out a survey form on their phone and select winners for each category. And there's more information on this on our Enjoy online page. The Great Glass Pumpkin Patch event is happening at the Art Center on October 2nd and 3rd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with more information on greatglasspumpkinpatch.com. And lastly, Chair Cribbs has graciously offered to provide a brief update on the senior games.
Oh, thank you so much, Darren. I appreciate your asking. Okay to go now? Great. So as you've heard a little bit about, we kicked off the Encore Games, which is a part of the Bay Area Senior Games, last Friday afternoon with a full complement of pickleball players at Mitchell Park's Pickleball Arena. So they played for 3 days and had a great time. About 275 entrances I counted because we counted out all the t-shirts. On Sunday, we had a volleyball tournament at Coverley, and on Monday, we had golf at the Baylands. So next up will be basketball, then archery, which is down in San Jose, cycling in Pescadero. And that this year is a 5 and 10K time trial, not a road race due to COVID. Soccer, swimming at Rinconada, and track and field up at the College of San Mateo, and that will conclude in December on the 12th. So it's about 2.5 months of senior athletics for men and women over 50 years of age. And so just to provide it in context, both the Encore Games and the Bay Area Games are part of the Senior Game, the California Senior Games Association and the National Senior Games Association. There are senior games in every state supported by a whole variety of different organizations, many by park and recreation departments, some by the state itself, some by senior activities directors, and some by nonprofits. The first 4 places in the recent Encore Games qualify by division. So they're divisions of 5 years, 50 to 54, 55 to 59, and so up to 90 to 95. First 4 places in each age division and each sport qualified to go to the National Summer Games in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in May of 2022. Those games have been postponed for actually 2 times due to COVID. So we have our fingers crossed that the games will continue. Sort of as a reflection, the outdoor sports are much more popular. I think people feel safe being outdoors. The indoor sports, not so much, although I have to admire the volleyball players who played with their masks on, and also we required proof of vaccination. So we're all glad to be back with this kind of competition, and we're very grateful to the help of the City of Palo Alto, the Parks Department, the Community Services Department with facilities, all of the volunteers from all over the area, the Palo Alto Pickleball Club for sure, and our Encore Games sports commissioners. And so if you want to know more about senior games, which are maybe the best kept secret in the state, there are 4 websites and they're pretty easy. One is encoregames.org. The next one is bayareaseniorgames.org. The next one is californiaseniorgames.org. And the national website is nsga.org. And I'd be happy to send those around so that people have them in writing. It is an amazing achievement for all of these seniors, and the atmosphere of all the athletes is contagious. Everybody is enthusiastic, everybody is upbeat, and everybody is positive, and just glad to be out and doing something positive. So thanks, Darren, for letting me go on and on and on, and I can do more, but I certainly appreciate you guys, and thanks for listening too. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much.
Okay, so that's the department report. Do the commissioners have any questions of Darren?
I have a question about the JMZ, the soft opening. What does that mean? Is it limited displays? And are they charging admission?
Yes, still to be determined. Yeah, when we have a more solid game plan, I'll be sure to let you know. But I believe it'll be, I think it's partially related to COVID. So it's the number of people, how widely it's publicized, things like that. And perhaps which parts are open. When I have more details, I'll be sure to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Darren, regarding the Coverley lights, in years past, they have turned off the lights during the Christmas break. Are they going to continue to do that this year?
I believe so.
Okay, so November 7th is when it starts, 5:30 to 8:30 until daylight saving time.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a couple. Regarding the Jaco Jaunt, did you say that the winners will be selected by participants?
Yes.
Interesting. So it's a revamped setup to try and get better participation, I guess.
I suppose just an opportunity for people to vote for the ones they like best, for the people there, and maybe difficulty getting judges.
Was that at Cal Ave?
No, that's at the Plaza, Lytton Plaza.
Yeah, and last year was at 2 locations. I think it was at Cal Ave and University Avenue. And regarding the BCCs needing to adopt findings, I wasn't quite clear on that. Could you clarify that to the best of your understanding?
I don't have any additional information. I believe something to the effect of we support continued and understand the logistics and constraints with continuing with the remote meetings until the next 30-day period. So every 30 days, meaning every meeting, we'd have to do something with findings, but I didn't get any details on exactly what that means. I believe it would be an action item that would just take a moment or two. And as soon as I have the template from the attorney's office, I'll be sure to share it.
And what would happen during months where there's 5 weeks between meetings instead of 4?
I'll defer to the attorney's office on how to handle those.
Thanks.
Along that line, was there any discussion about the public, once we go back to in-person meetings, the public being able to come in by Zoom?
Yeah, right now, the council for November 1st, I think will be the hybrid meeting where they have already been working on this for quite some time and how to do it so people could attend in person and via Zoom. And so I'll be attending a training on Thursday to see how it works and try to learn. Lam and I both will be there and try to figure out how we're going to do it. I understand it's a little heavy in staff resources to make that work. And so it's of concern, and I'm hoping we can figure out a way to make it work with what we have, which is just the 2 of us.
Good. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, thanks.
That's
And
fine.
you
Go ahead, David.
and you said that you don't know yet whether the people the new commissioners who are chosen will start January 1st or mid-April. You don't know that.
No, I don't have the answers to those questions, but I would believe it would go concurrent with the termination. So as we have people who expire, we'd have the new ones start that meeting. But
So it's possible that the expiring commissioners would need to stay on until April?
I don't think that'll be the case, but we'll see. I've got a request into the clerk's office for those answers, and as soon as I get them, I'll let you know.
And I believe the terms expire on December 15th. And so if our December meeting were after the 15th, I think it would be the new commissioners that would be coming on then.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, so I'm just wanting to comment, make sure that they are the terms that are expiring, not the commissioners who are expiring.
Sorry, terms, yes.
I don't know if I propagated the myth, but
Okay, anybody else have a question? Okay, well, we can move on then to the business part of the meeting. Darren, should we approve the minutes one by one, or can we do it together since we have 2 minutes?
I would do them independently.
Okay, fine. So can we have a motion to approve the minutes from July 27th? Remember, these weren't ready last time because of the way we changed over the minutes, so we deferred them. So is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve those minutes.
And a second?
Second.
Lam, could you take a vote, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, this is a vote for the July.
July
meeting.
27th, yes.
Yes. Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Lemire. I think that nod was a yes. And Commissioner Recknell.
Yes.
Commissioner Lemire is muted.
Commissioner Lemire, can you say hello to us? I think there might be an audio issue even when you unmute. Yes, it looks like we have an audio issue. But I will, if you're not, that's a vote yes. I'll take that. Chair Cribs, that's a vote to approve the minutes for July 6-0.
Thank you so much. And then let's go to the minutes of August 24th, a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
And a vote, please, Slum.
Yes, this is a vote for the August meeting minutes. Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Lemire, if you could give us a nod, thank you. And Commissioner Recknell.
Yes.
Chair, that is a 6-0 vote to approve.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's move on to the liaison reports. And I have to say, reading the minutes of August, I found it really helpful to have the reports included in the minutes. I don't know about everybody else, but it was a great reminder of all the things that were attended to or needed to be attended to. So thank you. Starting off with the Foothills Nature Preserve. Moss, Greenfield, or Reckdahl, maybe one of you could take that one.
we've met several times, and one of the meetings was about bike use of a gate between Arastradero and Foothills, and we had heard from a group of bicyclists earlier that month to ask if we could open it up. We will
And that was a joint meeting with members of Payback,
right.
the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Right. Did we discuss videography before last meeting or after last meeting? I can't remember.
I think it was discussed at this past month.
Right. Trying to align, see if there was a difference, there needed to be a difference between videography in Foothills versus the rest of the parks and open spaces.
Yeah, so our goal is to have a recommendation to the commission this year. And I think I think our goal should be to get that recommendation to this group of commissioners. And if terms expire on the 15th of December, then either we should look to have our meeting before the 15th or bring this to the November meeting.
Jeff, is there a date yet for a report to council? I was frozen for a minute, so you may have already covered that.
The report, there is no specific date for a report to council. We would be looking to go back to the commission first and have a recommendation to council coming from the commission that the ad hoc recommends to the commission first.
We do owe a report on many issues that we've been dealing with all summer to the commission before the end of the year. And we're on track to do that, hopefully November meeting if, well, it depends on when the December meeting is.
Yeah, December 15th is a Wednesday, so it's possible that we could schedule that last meeting on the 14th, since we usually avoid Christmas week.
And we'll probably want to look at scheduling our November and December meetings soon.
Our commission meetings? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, can we move on to Keith? Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the Baylands Tide Gate, Jeff?
No update.
Okay. Okay, on the Fund Development Committee, we met once. We have some specific items, the four that we're looking to talk about funding, and they're sort of in process. We hope to bring a memo to the commission in October. So those were the sort of the updates on the four, and we'll be having an update tonight, or certainly more than an update tonight, around the first tee. The CIP review, David?
No news. Again, we're waiting till the end of the year to start discussing the CIPs for next year.
Thank you. Racket court policy.
Yeah, we did have a meeting. Mandy, do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Or should I give?
We did have a meeting, just some update on the pickleball courts as well as the tennis usage. I think that staff was hopeful to bring forward some revised policies at the October meeting, assuming that we can fit that on the agenda, along with like just a general update. But Keith, I don't know if you have more information you want to add.
Yeah, I missed the meeting, but the summary from Adam also mentioned changing, instead of just USTA, potentially having other tennis groups.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be part of that recommendation.
Is there any more about signage or private lessons or any of that?
No, nothing new on that.
Were you talking about the lines on the pickleball courts at all? The colors of the lines in your ad hoc?
We've mentioned that. We don't have any resolution to that.
Okay.
We realize that it's not optimal, but the concern is that if you make the pickleball lines more visible, it makes it harder on the tennis people.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like there's no real good solution.
Okay, moving on to dog parks and restrooms. Restrooms, I guess, are in development. Darren, would you remind us what restrooms? Besides
Ramos?
Rinconada and Ramos, right?
And the Rinconada one, I don't believe there's funding to move forward with that restroom at this time. So it might be a phase 2 part of that project, but Ramos is looking like it will, I don't know the time frame. It's really dependent on Public Works engineering staff. And this next one would, the other two would be Bulware. And that one is slated to go out to bid in January or February as the project, and then construction, I'm not exactly sure yet, to be determined. And then the third one is the field restroom for Coverley.
Wasn't the Heritage Park with the museum sort of kind of rolled up in that discussion also?
That's true too, yeah.
And Coverley,
And the Coverley field restroom, yes.
Well, that's good news, right? Coming along. And we're still kind of treading water with the dog park community meeting to discuss the pilot program. We haven't scheduled anything, any reach out with that, except for to talk to the dog owners.
The Coverley Field restrooms have been delayed for several years because of technical difficulties. And so those have all been worked out.
No, I don't think they've been completely worked out. I know they're getting closer.
Okay, new recreational opportunities. We have not met with the soccer people again, although they would like to schedule a meeting with us. The skateboard situation is still meeting and working through some issues. Darren, you think we'll be back in October?
I don't know, Chair. Staff is so overwhelmed with other projects right now. It's difficult to take that one on, and it needs staff attention. We're spread too thin right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then that's also the discussion of the gym, which I think is making some progress. So we'll be able to talk about it next month. And then the sidewalk vendor policy, which maybe we should just wait until we have the discussion on the agenda.
Makes sense.
And then the Mid-Penn Regional Hawthorne Area Planning. Jeff, do you have anything on that? You're on mute, please. I can see you talking.
nothing happening still.
Yeah, do you know when their next meeting is?
There's
Darren?
nothing scheduled at this
Nothing
point.
scheduled.
Okay.
We're ready.
Okay, moving on to the liaisons. Aquatics, Tim and I had a discussion yesterday. He said everything's great with the pool. So that's good news. He's going on vacation or out for a couple of weeks, but he'll be back. And he seems pleased with how everything is going. So I haven't heard anything from anybody else. The Balin's 10.5, sort of the same thing. The soccer groups would like to have a conversation. Jeff Lemire, do you want to say anything about that? Oh, Jeff might not be able to say anything.
Commissioner LeMaire just logged off and tried logging back on right now.
Okay, all right, well, we'll come back to that. Mandy,
Excuse me, Jeff's there. We can ask him to try to speak.
Jeff, we're not sure whether you can hear us. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I think, do I have everything now? Okay. I changed computers, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It happens. So do you have any thoughts about the 10.5 at this point?
I didn't hear the previous question, but I mean, I don't have anything
Okay.
to add at
that's
this
fine.
point.
Community gardens, Mandy?
Nothing to report.
And Coverley, David?
No, we're still waiting for the school district and the city council to start meeting. I don't know when that's going to happen.
Maybe Councilmember Ku has some update?
Well, last we spoke, the school board the ad hoc committee school board was going to take it back to their entire board to discuss what the school board is going to want to vote on, and to also determine what kind of sizes and do they require, how much of an exchange, if there is potential exchanges, and how much more land would they need? What are their goals in terms of Coverley and other sites? So they have to go back and speak to their board and update the board. The council is supposed to do the same. There is discussion of a joint meeting, joint study session between the school board and council at some point. But as Darren has said, staff is pretty overwhelmed right now.
Mhm.
So it's kind of put in it's a process, so there's going to be certain priorities that has to be addressed before, and I don't know where that is within the priority.
So if you find out anything that you could share for the next meeting, that would be great. I think everybody, not speaking for all the commissioners, but I think everybody is really interested in Coverley and what may happen or may not happen in Coverley. And it's sort of hard to understand how much energy should be expended on doing anything with Coverley or not doing anything with Coverley. And I know I appreciate the fact that we were able to have a volleyball tournament there on Sunday. I also am, I don't know how to say this because I appreciate the facility, but it needs a coat of paint desperately. And it also needs some attention to the parking lot because the big chuck holes in the parking lot are big enough for my little car to almost fall into. And it just would be nice if we as a community, and I'm not saying the city staff, but if we as a community could put some attention toward Coverley in the short term rather than the long term. So that's enough from me tonight, but I don't know whether the other commissioners share my frustration or not.
Well, there was also mentioned before about the resurfacing the tennis courts to take burden off of the Mitchell Park tennis courts. And there was some question about wanting to spend the money, and I think they definitely should. And even put some temporary lights in.
Okay, well, that's Coverley. Thank you, David. Anybody else on Coverley? Okay, let's move on to the field users. Jeff, there's a meeting coming up. Brokering the fields.
Yes, I don't know that I'll be participating in that. Staff's usually able to handle that, and if there's issues, and I'll engage. There's no update with the field users group this month after many months of many updates.
Okay, thank you very much. Goff?
Although I will say that the field condition at the Coverley Fields is really as poor as it's been in quite some time. It's unfortunate.
Wow.
The grass fields are a mess.
Is that because of lack of irrigation, or is there other issues?
I don't know exactly. Part of it is use. Part of it is in some cases there's been overwatering. There's been some ponds and there've been some swamp areas in the middle of the fields during games that I've been out on the field during. There's dry areas. In the past, the field has been the past few years. The field has been in pretty good condition and generally better than the JLS Mitchell Park fields, which is not the case right now.
Well, part of the budget, the COVID budget was to reduce maintenance. Is that a factor?
That is a factor. Yeah, we had renovations of Coverley Fields that were unfortunately part of some of the reductions we had to make. And you see the effects.
Yep.
And so when these reductions are put in place, are the stakeholders notified about this in the event that they might choose to pony up some funds to help keep the fields in better condition through a certain period of time, which many of the stakeholders have done in the past?
Yeah, we did provide a cost estimate, a bid actually from our provider to Palo Soccer and then maybe another group as well. And so they've got it. We refreshed it again recently. They asked again. And so they've got that information and we'll see what they choose.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, the Coverley Fields are tremendously used. Hundreds of kids every afternoon, many different groups, not just Palo Alto Soccer. So they all ought to have that, be aware that they could help fund maintenance.
Okay. GSI doesn't have a liaison right now. The Palo Alto Recreation Foundation had skipped their meeting in August and are back meeting, working on vaccines and also talking about upcoming projects for the foundation to fund. Palo Alto School District, Keith, and the city?
Yeah, nothing to report about the school district. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Safe routes, Jeff?
No update, although the discussion with the payback and the Foothills Nature Preserve ad hoc was related to safe routes.
Thank you. Mandy, sustainability?
The community meetings for the climate action plan are ongoing, but nothing pertinent to report right now.
And Darren just talked about the skateboard park. Jeff, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Urban forestry?
Yes, I mentioned previously that the Policy and Services Committee had recommended some significant changes to the city tree ordinance, and part of that was also a recommendation to formalize the relationship between PRC and the Urban Forestry Department or section, and that is going to City Council on the 18th of October, and so it's possible we may get some update before our next commission meeting.
Great, thank you.
Are we supposed to hear from them before City Council here in the commission?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
This is urban forest,
Yes.
and
This
aren't we supposed to be having public discussion? Aren't we supposed to be dealing with urban forest and presenting to City Council, or at least being in the loop before City Council?
No, we don't have a specific mandate for that at this point in time. This is something that City Council could choose to direct otherwise.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand our relationship to urban forest.
In the past, we've had urban forestry make a presentation to the Parks and Rec Commission along with other departments in a manner similar to other departments from within Public Works, but there's no specific relationship beyond that.
Okay, I thought there was a more specific relationship above and beyond that starting last year.
About 2 years ago, when Walter Passmore last presented to the Parks and Rec Commission, the annual report, there was an agreement in principle that we should pursue a relationship. And that languished a bit during COVID in terms of formalizing that. And this is something that City Council is considering next month.
Good. Okay, let's move on to the Ventura plan. Keith?
Yeah, the Ventura plan went to council for the last time and they finished it 8 days ago. The council was responsive about the parks. They implemented a lower density or maybe a lower intensity use, which hopefully should leave more room for parks. The problem is that the plan, this is all privately owned, does not include any explicit funding. So down the road, we're going to have to find funding for parks, and that'll take some funding and also take some planning by council. So the issue isn't over, but I think it's a good first step.
So I think your letter made a good point, and I thought your comments in the newspaper were very reasoned and good. So thank you for that work on that, Keith.
Well, thank you.
So ending up on our list of liaisons, I'm very happy to report, this is ending on a positive note, that our youth council is back and meeting. I went to the first meeting last week and to the stopped by the retreat that they had the Saturday before. We are so lucky to have such bright, enthusiastic, energetic young people in our community. And it is a pleasure to watch them do a meeting, do planning, and be inclusive and be excited about the world in general. So they're off to a really good start, and I really appreciate the work that the Recreation and Community Services staff is doing with them as well, Darren.
So I'll pass that on. Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Okay, well then that moves us to the
Before we leave that is an amazing number of liaisons and ad hocs.
I know.
I don't know if it's more than we've had in the past, but that's a huge amount of work. And I think the city council mentioned that when they were trying to figure out last spring whether or not to reduce the number of commissioners. But you can see how many balls we have in the air. It's pretty incredible.
Well, and the one thing that we did was to take some of the ad hocs and turn them into liaisons, which is why we have so many liaisons now. But you're right, it's a lot, and commissioners are doing a lot of work. So thanks for mentioning that, David. So now we can move to number 3 on the agenda. I'm happy to welcome back the first tee of Silicon Valley and give this over to Lam to introduce our guest tonight. So Lam, it's all yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the Commission for this opportunity to reintroduce a youth development opportunity through a public-private partnership, which has been proposed by the first tee. Yes, we are coming back to the Parks and Rec Commission, and this time we are asking for consideration of a staff recommendation. The first tee and the city have collaborated for the past 12 years in providing a facilitation of the first tee's program, which focuses on youth development through learning of the game of golf. And George Moxie of the first tee will talk about that in detail in a little bit here. So I want to give you some of the kind of premise background. The first tee has approached the city to further solidify this collaboration by formalizing a public-private partnership on a long-term basis. And the first tee is proposing a 2-part partnership. First and foremost is a long-term of 50 years to ensure program growth and access for continuing youth development with established priority for dates and times. But in addition to that, there's a key part of this partnership, and it's infrastructure improvements to bring the facilities at the Baylands Golf Links to the level that can facilitate the goals of the first tee and also that of the city to further expand opportunities for youth not just learning the game of golf, but the overall goals of the community services, which has very much to do to assets and skill sets learned in youth development. So with that, if I could introduce to you George Moxie, the CEO of the First Tee Silicon Valley. And George will speak more of the proposal that the First Tee has approached the city with, and then we'll open up for a questions and answers, and then conclude and ask for the commission's consideration of the staff recommendation. So George, if you would, please take over.
Great, thank you, Lam. Good evening, commissioners. I'm going to bring back up, I think I can share this and you can see it. This is the presentation that I made to you about 10 months ago. Hasn't really changed in this last year. We've obviously all experienced an awful lot going on with COVID, but I just thought I'd give you a little refresher on us. Lam mentioned that we started our programs at Palo Alto Muni back in 2009, or there it is, I'm saying Palo Alto Muni, hearkening back to the old days. And then we went over to Moffett Field during the years of the construction project and returned back to Baylands in 2018. In 2019, our program, a number of unique, we call them unique children, so we're not double counting kids or anything like that, grew to about 290 in 2019. I'm happy to report that we've returned back to normal, so to speak, following all the safety protocols. And we have just about 100 youth signed up this fall for classes. But we also have about 60, 65 on waiting lists. So the demand for what we're doing is super, super high. As Lum mentioned, we're all about life skills. Golf is the vehicle. And I'd say it's about a kind of a 2/3, 1/3 emphasis, where character development is really key to what we do. It's also super important to remember that we're really trying to expand participation in the game and access into the game to children from backgrounds where the families may have no connection to golf whatsoever. And it's super, super important for us to be able to do all of this in after school hours. So, and Saturdays, that's when the highest demand for our programs is, pretty clearly. To be able to reach the youth that we really want to draw to golf, outreach is really, really critical. We really target the Title I schools, underserved communities, to try to help introduce the game of golf to those kids. And then just a little bit of context, Baylands is just one of 3 main locations that we have. Our biggest location has been in East San Jose, and then we're also at Gavilan College Golf Course in Gilroy. And then just a little bit of our track record, just highlight that our programs serves about 40% girls, and about 85% of the participants are non-white, to give you an idea of the diversity that we're seeing. And then also right around 30% of the youth are from low-income families. Our goal with that is for that to be 50%. So a little bit about this project. So when Lam and I first began discussing this a few years ago, we were talking about maybe doing a high performance center, covered range stalls, things like that. And it became pretty clear that the amount of time that it would take for approvals and everything to move through the city for any kind of structure would really delay what we needed to be able to continue expanding our program. And then we could get a much quicker impact for the players, the customers there at Baylands, the public, and also the kids that we're serving in our program, if we really split into 2 separate projects that are part of the same vision. So what we're focused on today is this project 1, which is about a $4.2 million project. And that's what you're seeing in this graphic. So what it includes at a most basic level is higher range netting, which is these red dots, and then new lower netting where these yellow dots are that protect golf balls in this youth area from going into Embarcadero Road, which is along the base of the image here. So what this would do is it would allow us to do programming in this youth area safely and completely out of the way of the public. And remember, this youth area has never been utilized in the entire history of the golf course. Also, it would open up use of the short game hole that was developed when the golf course was improved and turned into baylands. So that's this first project. I can go into some detail on the second project, but really, it really depends on the first project being completed. And one of the things that is super, super important for us is to get a city commitment so that we can go raise funds. We're fortunate that Saga Foundation, which is a local foundation, has already pledged $500,000 for this. And the charitable side of Wadsworth Golf Construction, which actually did the Baylands construction project, we estimate will probably contribute about $100,000. And of course, as soon as we get that commitment and we can get rolling on this project, we will significantly increase our outreach. Right now, because of the demand that I mentioned, there's nowhere for the kids to go. If we reach out to Palo Alto schools and Ravenswood schools, there's no place for those kids to go. So we would ramp that up significantly so that we're reaching about 5,000 kids a year in outreach. And ultimately, we want to grow to about 1,000 children a year there at Baylands. What that equates to is about $500,000 in investment in our instructors and our infrastructure, everything into the community for classes, and then about 100,000 for outreach. So that's a basic summary of what we're envisioning, what we're proposing. Lam, is there anything additional that you would add before we open to questions?
No, thank you, George, for summarizing that. Yeah, just a minor add is that for the commission, staff for the past handful of months have been in discussions with the first tee. And so this different from the first time where when the first tee first made the proposal and we went to the commission, it was sort of to introduce the project. Now, though, we are asking the commission for a recommendation. I'm seeing our chair's screen might be frozen.
No, I think I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we hear you.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who want to speak before we go to the commissioners?
Chair, there are no hands up to speak on this topic.
Okay, thank you very much. So commissioners, let's start with the vice chair and take either questions or comments. Now you're frozen, Lon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lom and George, for all the work you put into this. The program reach and diversity is really impressive and laudable. And hope that we are able to figure out a way for you to expand your reach. I do have a number of questions. Regarding, and I did read through the proposal that was included in the packet. The driving range capacity, how many stalls are there currently, and how many would this expand to with a second floor? And I have some questions about the potential to expand the driving range to two floors, and that sounds like that could potentially stall things out, and I'm trying to understand that.
Yes, the capacity at the driving range as is currently can vary depending on how far out the hitting stalls are spaced. They are not permanent stalls. They are divided by a movable guard and a mat. So in this view here, George, it looks like George zooming in. Each of those green dots, those are actually not dotted. It's not a dotted line drawn on the map. That's actually a picture of each of the mats. So we can get anywhere between about 24 and up to about 28, maybe even squeeze in a couple more hitting stalls, depending on how far we space out. We during COVID we had even fewer stalls. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
Yeah, that's good. I'm just looking for a ballpark idea. And if you were to expand, my understanding is you're considering expanding to a second floor to increase driving range capacity. And is that part of the 4.2 million initial round? No, that's not. Okay.
No, not this project. We've heard some interest in that. So one of the issues with that would be the height of the nets. So the trajectory study that Parks and Rec did, or the Community Services did, I can't remember long, maybe 3-4 years ago, showed that the nets needed to be at least 132 feet high. So the approval that we gained from the FAA was for 135-foot nets. So if an added level on the driving range would probably mean an additional 15 feet, I would assume.
Or potentially more, we don't know.
Okay, so that's not part of phase one, if that's the right way. Okay, because there was some wording about how including that could delay things, and just trying to understand that and understand how it impacted the finances. So that would be part of the phase two potentially. And okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
I think that, yeah, phase two or separately.
Right. So the request is that 8 stalls be dedicated to first tee on Saturday. And so that would be out of 24 to 28 stalls. I'm trying to understand what the impact would be for current users on Saturdays in terms of what's being asked for. So if
That's correct. Yes, the first tee would be asking for its use of up to 8 stalls on Saturdays. And then during the week, it would be up to 6 stalls in the afternoon for roughly an hour and a half to 2 hour time frame.
And the 8 stalls on weekends, is that going to be all day, or is it going to be variable depending on how many are being used? Is it going to fluctuate back and forth a bit? I'm trying to understand that.
If I can ask for George, I think it looks like George's screen is frozen on my end. So George, if you're not able to answer, I'll take the question.
Sure, I would, Commissioner, if we are at full utilization, full capacity with our classes, it would be all day.
Okay.
We would anticipate classes from 8 a.m. through the 4 p.m. start. So till probably 6 p.m.
Okay, and so we're hoping that you're full. So it would be taking anywhere from a third of the stalls to more than a quarter of the stalls. So I'm trying to understand what the impact would be for the community, and do we have, has the current golf operator weighed in on this? What are their feelings, or have we heard from them?
Yes, and I could, before I answer about the golf operator, also keep in mind that the first tee is proposing it during the 4 seasons of the year, but 8 weeks in each season. So they're not asking it for all weeks of the year. They're asking it for yeah. Our current golf management company, they are in favor of expanding programs to youth. They, in general, though, have I think the similar concern to you is what is the impact on the community, but if we were to dedicate some space. Overall, in general, though, they do want to see youth participation continue at the course. It's more of a how we get about to that, and what we can work out, and perhaps have determine a set footprint, and continue with that set footprint so they can plan around it.
And is the current operator specifically aware of the request and plan to dedicate the 8 stalls on Saturdays to First Tee?
They are aware, but I also would caution that we perhaps should think of this longer term. This would be a 50-year partnership, and the partnership may change during that time, I would say. But our agreement with the golf course operator right now is for 3 years with an opportunity to renew for additional 3 years. So we can have the current operators for up to 6 years, and after that, the city will likely continue either renewing again or going out for another operator. So I just want to put in perspective that there are 2 things going on: how long the current operator is with us, and also how long this partnership is.
Okay, thanks. Regarding the short game hole and the practice chipping green and the youth practice area, if I understand correctly, or how is the short game hole used now? And my understanding is that the practice chipping green and the youth practice area aren't used, or they aren't developed at all right now. And would these be used? Would these be exclusive use for First Tee, or when First Tee isn't using them, would they be available for others to use?
I think this will be a 2-part answer. I'll start, and then George, if you could expand on that from a perspective of First Tee. Both the area to the left of the driving range, which is the youth area, and then to the right of the driving range, which is the short game area, they've both been developed. They were developed during the reconstruction of the golf course 3 years ago. However, they have not been put in use. So the reason they have not been put in use is because the current height of the driving range nets does not retain balls hit. So as a result, each day we have from a handful to 20 to 30 balls leaving the driving range and landing in either of those areas. And it depends on the wind pattern of the day as well. So as a result, those 2 areas have very little or and that's why the key part of this proposal from the First Tee is to raise the nets, the height of the nets.
And when First Tee is not using them, would these areas be available to the general public to use?
Sure. So our use of the short game area would be similar to what we were just discussing about the range stalls. It would only be during our programming, because that area is wide open to the public to begin with. In terms of the youth area, what Lam and I have discussed, and we've also discussed with the current operator, is when First Tee is not using the area, that it be under the control of the operator, where the First Tee has an ability to still use it in our off class time hours, but that the operator be in more control over it for private lessons and other youth organizations, etc., but not just completely open to the public, that the short game area can serve that purpose.
Okay, so the youth area is available for supervised use?
That's a great way of putting it, yes.
Okay. So it'll be a secure area, and programs can be run there.
Correct. Is that fair to say, Lum?
I think it is. I mean, that's the goal of all part of coming to an agreement on that. It would be included in the final proposal. I just want to kind of have a caveat that we still have a lot of ironing out to do, but that's kind of the goal of what the First Tee desire is. And the city, from a perspective, is we would like it to be an area that we could program and plan use. So I think we're close to coming to sort of an agreement on that. Great.
The facilities that are, so we're looking at a 50-year agreement. Are the facilities that are being added intended to have a lifespan of 50 years, or this is just getting us started and there will be ongoing development? What kind of time horizon are we looking at for infrastructure?
I think it's hard to say what the lifespan of what the infrastructure improvements will be. It'll be dependent upon how it's constructed. I'll just use, for example, metal poles versus wooden poles. The netting, of course, would be over time, will need to be replaced. I think if we were to gauge with our current use, our nets that are there right now, as far as I'm aware, have not been replaced probably in at least 15 years or more. The poles, I could be wrong, but I think they have been there from the beginning. Of course, the poles, the next version of the poles, if we were to move forward with this proposal, would be a different design, and it depends on that design, how that design comes out.
Right, and our understanding from Judge Netting that does a lot of this work in around the Bay Area is that it would require metal poles, but one of the benefits of metal poles is that they would only have to have half as many poles. So in terms of sight lines, et cetera, it'd be half as many poles to see.
Okay, and because that was a question that I had when we talked 11 months ago, that the understanding that the poles would change from the wood telephone poles to metal concerns, and asked staff if there were any concerns about that, and staff, Darren, you said that would be something that would be assessed. So if there's half as many poles required, that sounds like a plus. And what's the relative increase in height of the poles?
From currently there's 70 and they would need to be 135.
That's feet high.
Correct.
Great. Okay. That's enough questions for now. I'll let someone else.
I was going to ask you if you would mind letting somebody else ask a couple of questions. So Jeff Lemaire.
I almost asked you not to start with me.
I appreciate the vice chair's questions, and he actually asked many that I did have, and I appreciate the detail and care that he took with those. I appreciate George being here and the work that both George and Lom have done with this, and the conversations that they've had to try to push this forward. I think it's a very exciting project, and it's interesting when Keith was mentioning before about the Ventura project and parks, and he made a comment about funding and how so much of what we do comes down to funding. And so it's seems that the more that we're involved in this as time goes by, the public-private partnerships are very important to what we do with parks and recreation. It was also great to hear Lom say that the existing operator is also very excited about this project. And to me, more than anything, it's an opportunity for our youth. And anything that we can do to create opportunities for our youth is a real benefit. Myself, as a coach in my profession, very much believe in the ability of sports to impact youth. And so to see First Tee's model and focus on character, focus on integrity, and how sport can impact that is very tremendous. I guess a couple questions I may have would be, it looks like with the improvements you're doing, the poles in that netting, is that the majority of the cost of the project? Is that correct?
So yes. So there's a little caveat in there. So the estimate that we got on the netting was a little over $2 million. But one of the questions that comes up is, what do you do with the existing poles, for example? So we were given the sense that if the poles do not have to be removed from the ground, that it could save up to, I think it was $500,000. So there's some variability in that, but it's mostly the netting and the poles, and then it's the preparation of the youth area.
And then in terms of maintenance, the city is responsible for maintenance, is my understanding. Is that's correct? And then if something does happen to the nets where they do need to be replaced, does that fall upon the city, or what's the discussion there if something before your lease runs out and something happens with the poles? What is the arrangement?
That hasn't been discussed yet. I think there's much discussion to be come forward as part of the, whether it be a letter of intent that we developed or whether it's a memorandum of understanding, and then a final partnership proposal. For reference, currently the city does maintain the site, and the city would be responsible at present how these poles and nets are. And so regardless of whether or not this partnership proceeds, in the current facility, we would have to invest in that, in the driving range as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead. Yeah.
You bet. And Lum, I believe we've had some discussions about the notion of a lease back, like a lease back period just for construction. Because the 50-year lease that we're talking about is for the youth area. It's not for the whole range and short game and all of that. But to enable us to do the construction, I believe there needs to be some type of a lease and then a lease back, something like that, Lum? Kind of an option.
That's a possibility, and it'll depend on what model we go about in regards to facilitating the development of the site. In the past, the city has used that type of model where we leased the property to the public-private partner, and then the public-private partner developed it and then gave it back to the city. An example of that would be the Magical Bridge Playground, where the city owned the land in the beginning. We leased it to Magical Bridge. They developed it in partnership with the city, and then afterwards, I believe through a quitclaim process or a legal process of such, gave it back to the city.
Okay, thank you for your time. And it's interesting that it was about a year ago that you guys came here, and it's great to be here with the commission to be able to try to push a project forward like this. And although a year may seem like a long time, it's actually wonderful for us to be able to take some action. And I am in full support of what you're doing, and hopefully we can get this to city council. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Commissioner Brown?
Yes, thanks for the great presentation and the information. I just have a couple quick questions. I know you gave some initial estimates on the fundraising numbers and capacity. How long do you have initial projections on how long you think it would take you to raise the full amount?
No, it's unclear. It's unclear, but here I was thinking as we were talking, something that's happened I've seen 3 gifts over the last 3 years from the same individual. One was for $5 million for a facility in San Francisco. Another was for $5 million for a first tee facility in Austin. And the third is $25 million for the first team nationally, all from the same individual. So it is not out of the realm that same individual who grew up playing at Palo Alto Muni might do the same type of thing. So it might happen that fast. It's just it's really, really hard to tell.
Right.
But the money is in the area for sure.
Of course, it's just interesting because there's a lot of projections going on, but it's nice to see that there's already a lot of interest in this, and it's a larger community benefit. The other sort of just more of a comment as this moves forward and discussions continue is considering that maintenance. Obviously, it's sort of a hot topic with this commission with the maintenance requirements at other facilities, that when you're looking at materials or modifications, to consider the maintenance cost of those materials and trying to really prioritize what is going to last the longest. So that's just my feedback.
Mhm. And Lama, I believe that the previous GM, Ed, estimated that maintenance in the area might run around $1,200 to $1,800 a month, something like that.
That
For-
sounds
for the youth area.
That sounds about right. And for the commission, the cost to maintain that area is not necessarily additional just because we may go into a partnership with the First Tee. The city currently maintains that area as part of a larger maintenance contract. So we do expect the impact, but I also want to put in perspective that we currently do maintain it. And the other part of the perspective is with this partnership, it's both parties would gain use of it. So it's not necessarily just a burden on the city for the First Tee. There's a benefit to youth, there's a benefit to the First Tee, there's a benefit to the city and the community service department.
Thank you. Commissioner Rectal.
Yeah, I am very excited about this. I think it looks like it'll be a win-win. I mean, golf is a very inclusive sport. You can have people of varying different skills and ages playing with each other. Kids can play with their grandparents or parents. It's, in that sense, a very good sport. And I also like the fact that we're extending the resident discount to EPA. That's a very neighborly thing to do, and I think it's good practice. I have some questions about the presentation or the report. In the appendix or the attachment, they talk about a 30-year use with a 20-year renewal. Whose option is that to renew?
That'll be finalized in the final agreement, but I believe right now, from the First Tee perspective, that it would be a renewal automatically, or based on their desire. Sorry, I don't think we've really gotten in that much detail about it. So, George, you're nodding, so I hope I answered it correctly.
I think so. I think our attorney who's helped with this, Ash Pariah, he had his logic in this of why it was that. And I understand that the entire thing can't be more than 50. There's something in state regulations or something about that he's brought up. But there's some kind of logic that he has. Unfortunately, he has had a family emergency and couldn't be with us tonight.
Okay, but the spirit of it is that we expect this to last 50 years.
Yes.
And this might just, okay. So it's not that after 30 years, the city can reassess whether they still want the First Tee or whatever. We expect that this is going to be a 50-year project. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The next thing was, the afternoon priority for all youth. What does that mean? Does that mean everyone, even if they're not affiliated with the First Tee?
Sorry, Commissioner Recto, which part of the staff report are you referring to?
Okay, this is facility use and, okay.
Is this in the attachments or in the body of the report?
In the attachment.
Okay.
I can't see where it is right now, but let me see.
And I'm sorry, can you repeat it? And let me see if I can perhaps find it or understand it.
Okay, afternoon priority for all youth.
Yes, thank you. Part of the First Tee's goals is to instill not just access for the First Tee, but the First Tee also desires to have an understanding with the public that in the afternoons where there is a good likelihood of lower usage, that the First Tee and other youth who want to use the facilities have access to it. How that works out, we don't know what the details would be yet. But that's kind of the goal, is to not just make this a first tee priority access, but also in general to expand it to allow for youth access as sort of a youth hub in the afternoons.
Okay,
Yes,
so this could be any,
and that would include the Gun and Palo Alto high school teams.
okay. How about just some kid from Palo Alto who comes down, unaffiliated, unsupervised? That's fine. Just
I
any
think
youth.
that's great.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah, I think in the vision though, it's not that they would just hop on it and walk up and join a first tee program. It would be somehow that we have other opportunities for youth to walk up and participate and play golf or practice.
Okay, yeah. I was glad to hear that you were saying that the other areas, the new areas, like for example, the chipping areas, the youth area and the short game area would be supervised, because I think that would be troublesome to have that unsupervised, because you have a tee box there and I think there'd be this conflict of people hitting the balls and getting in the way of others. So I think having that supervised is probably the better route. Taller nets. When I heard 70 feet going to 135, I said, holy moly, that sounds like a lot. So I pulled up Google Street View, and there are some trees next to it that appear to be maybe 1.5 times that. So that must mean they're on the order of, 180-foot trees. So I think 135 isn't obscene. I would encourage you to work with urban forestry or canopy. If we're putting this big net in there, having some type of natural trees in front of that would be a very good option, I think. If we went to 2 stories on the driving range, you said that would be about 15-foot addition?
Unclear. I'm just assuming that a second floor would be about 15 higher than the ground level.
Okay.
And that's not something in our proposal, just
I understand.
It's not in project 1 or project 2, but I know Lam has heard some comments and suggestions about a second story. So that's why it's come up.
Okay. Lam, do you know of any other second story driving range? What kind of second story do they have? What's the spacing?
Yes, there in our area here regionally, in San Mateo / Foster City, there is one, and then in it's probably San Jose Saratoga border at the Prune Ridge Golf Course, there is another one as well. Both of those are second deck. They're not necessarily a second story. I would describe it as. They're more like a second deck. Their use, it's been a few years since I've been to either of them. I think it nighttime use, it tends to be more use than during the day. During the day, people tend to prefer it to be at the bottom level. There are some golf courses that have double decks, and they have different types of restrictions on what you can use club-wise, selection-wise on the upper deck versus the lower deck. And some of that is to address the distance that is necessary to have a second deck or a second story. So certain clubs are restricted in certain.
Okay, I could see that being problematic. Okay.
So Keith,
yep.
just are you okay with the second deck, because it's not part of either the first proposal or the second proposal?
The reason being is what Lahman was saying, that he thought it'd be more than 15 feet, and it didn't seem. But anyway, yeah, let's move on.
Thank you.
And finally, okay, we're getting a lot. I think this is a win-win, but we are also giving a lot. Lam, have you done any estimates of what kind of lost revenue we have? For example, we're losing some driving range with those 8 stalls. We've lowered the green fees for the EPA residents. And we also are giving some slots to the kids. Have we added up how much that's going to cost us in lost revenue?
It has not. As proposed, if adopted, the impact to green fee revenue by expanding the resident rates to select non-residents, that's really a hard one to gauge. We don't know how much more inviting that would be, or if that would not be as inviting as we think it would be.
Okay.
As for the impact, go ahead.
Oh, but like the driving range stalls, if we have
Yeah.
eight driving range stalls on the weekend, we have a pretty good idea what that's going to cost us, don't we?
I have not had the opportunity to crunch those numbers.
Okay.
If you'd like a rough estimate, I could be able to get back to the commission with a rough estimate in the near future.
Well, I certainly, if you can make an estimate, I think when this moves on to council, they're going to want the numbers. So I think
Right.
this is something we eventually have to do. So if you do it, certainly mail it out to us, but I'd be more interested in having to make sure that we have a full story for the council and that we know exactly what we're costing, what is the maintenance that we're promising, what is the cost of the nets. If the nets, it sounds like the nets and the poles together were 2 million. So if the netting is half that and it lasts for 20 years, the council really should know that they have a looming bill of maybe $1 million sometime in the next 20 years. So
yes, and just acknowledging the importance of having these financial impacts to bring to council. Yes, we absolutely do need that. I would like to point out though that what we're asking for right now is initially a recommendation that city council direct staff to enter into a letter of intent or memorandum of understanding. One of the purposes of that is to sort of establish a city commitment towards this. It would be non-binding, however, that we proceed, that guarantee that we continue on and are able to come to full agreement. I hope we do, but it's not necessarily something that's binding the city to that. And then we would, but it does help the first T do a lion's share of their fundraising with the city.
I understand,
Yeah.
but
and then
I
we
think
would then go back.
we're not asking for really fine estimates here. We're talking about ballpark figures. And if you give a ballpark figure to the council, I think they can make a better decision. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely, right. And we would go back to the council perhaps a second time as well with more details once we've had a letter of intent.
Yeah, and I don't think this is going to kill the project. I think that we are getting good value here, but we also should be clear to the council what we're giving up. Okay, thank you.
And you're muted, or Commissioner Krebs, you're muted.
Keith, is that it for you for now?
Yep, that's it.
Good. So I think we just have Commissioner Moss left to hear from, and then I have a couple of quick comments. David?
All my questions have been answered. There's a whole lot of them ahead of me. So thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Thank you, David. So I would just echo what David has said. First of all, thanks to the commissioners for good questions. And Keith, I really like the idea of trying to get some numbers. So the task that we have tonight is really to recommend to the council that they move forward with either the our LOI or the letter of intent. But I want to say that I am, as you guys know, have been incredibly enthusiastic about this project from the beginning. I've known the First Tee since we started them way back at the San Jose Sports Authority, and it must be 20 years ago now, George. I hate to say that. And they've evolved to be a fine organization. It's a nationally very well thought of organization as well. I have total confidence in the organization here in Silicon Valley, in the people, in the coaches, in the teachers. And I have a great deal of confidence in our city staff and also in the golf course vendor that we can put this together. And I think it's a total big win, as one of the other commissioners said, for the city. So I am incredibly enthusiastic about this, just because I believe so much in the power of sport, and especially in this instance in golf, to change the lives of kids and their families. So George, thank you for all of this. Lam, thank you for the work that you've done over the last many years to push this forward. And could we have a motion now from one of the commissioners?
One second, Chair Krebs, did Vice Chair Greenfield have still some questions left?
Just
Oh, he does.
couple
I
local
thought he-
questions.
I thought he did all his questions. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, appreciate that. During construction of the new netting and poles, what kind of time period of a closure of the driving range would be anticipated?
You know, Lum, I can speak to that. When we spoke to Judge Netting, I was actually a little surprised that it would be, the impression I got is that it would be minimal. I was surprised that on the Embarcadero side, that they could actually erect the poles and put in the netting while the existing netting was there. That it never occurred to me. And then on the course or the short game side, we're actually talking about potentially straightening the line. So the new poles might be slightly outside of the existing netting poles. So I was very surprised. They described it as minimal. And if I remember correctly, it was like a maximum a week to 2 weeks.
That's
That
great.
all remains to be seen, I think.
Sure, and it's an estimate, and that's great to hear right now. And could you just clarify again the participation numbers? I heard that in 2019 you had 290 participants, and I think I heard that now you have about 161 on the waiting list, but it was roughly, it was an equivalent number. Could you clarify that?
Sure. So 4 seasons, so that 100 becomes 400. And then what we've actually seen, what we saw pre-COVID was children were taking on average maybe 1.7 classes a year. So they take multiple seasons of classes.
Okay, that's great.
Pretty much on par with what it was pre-COVID.
Overall, I mean, there's lots of progress and improvements in addressing concerns since we last spoke, and I think it's great, and really looking forward to being able to support our youth with this opportunity.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Lam, could you put that, the motion back up on the screen, please? And then one of the commissioners could make that motion.
I believe it's back up. If you could confirm
Thank
that for
you.
me.
Yeah, I'm just seeing it right now.
Okay.
Who would like to make this motion?
I'm happy to make this motion.
Thank you, Keith. And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion further? Hearing none, then Lam, could you move to a voice vote?
Yes. Chair Cribs,
Yes. With,
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
and Commissioner Reckdahl.
Yes.
okay, well, maybe it's not appropriate, but I think this needs a round of applause because I feel really good about moving this on to the city council. So thank you very much to the staff and to George and to the first tee. We appreciate it and look forward to a long and successful partnership. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, George, and thank you, commissioners.
Okay, Darren, Valley Water Purified Water Project.
Thanks, Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce Kirsten Struve. She's Assistant Officer with the Water Supply Division Deputy's Office with the Valley Water. And I know she's got several staff with her tonight. I'll let her introduce those folks. Kirsten and team, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I'm going to share my PowerPoint, and yeah, we do have staff here as well as Palo Alto staff, Karen North, to answer any questions you might have. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. We good?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, thank you for having me this evening to tell you about this exciting project that we're collaborating on with the cities of Palo Alto and Mountain View. And you were just talking about P3. This is also a P3 project. So, but just a little bit about why we're doing this project. So with climate change, Santa Clara County will face more droughts, which will obviously have some economic impacts, not just from the lack of water, but also because of land subsidence, which is the land sinking due to overpumping of groundwater. And this chart actually shows how our land surface sank when groundwater was overpumped with the increasing population in the valley and development. And this can have significant impacts on infrastructure, and we work really hard on making sure that doesn't happen again. While half of the water in Santa Clara County is imported from outside the county, it has been important to continue to develop locally controlled supplies. So that is why recycled and purified water is an important component of our water supply portfolio. And when we say recycled water, we mean treated wastewater that is used for non-potable or non-drinking purposes. So this is typically delivered in purple pipes and is used for landscape irrigation, or it could be used for industrial purposes. And purified water is the recycled water that has undergone additional steps to make it cleaner and therefore suitable for drinking water purposes. And right now we are at 5% of recycled water used to meet demands in the county, and we're hoping to grow that with this project. So the purpose of the project we're going to talk about today is to further develop purified water as a drought resilient local water supply. Per our water supply master plan, we have a goal to double the share of recycled and purified water to 10%. And we have previously collaborated with the city of San Jose to construct the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, which began operation in 2014. And that purification center uses the treatment process described here: microfiltration, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet disinfection. And we give really excellent tours, and during COVID, they have been virtual. So if you want to learn more about this facility, feel free to sign up for a virtual tour. And so this technology, basically with that facility, we were showing that it can be used safely to create safe, clean, and reliable water. And this water is also, this technology is also something that's used on the International Space Station and water suppliers around the world. And what we would like to do is use this technology and then pump the clean water to replenish our groundwater basins. So the project would include a new or expanded water purification facility located in either San Jose or Palo Alto, and then 18 to 20 miles of pipeline to our Los Gatos recharge system. I'll talk more about what the recharge system is in a bit. So you will note an arrow leaving the purification center that is called RO concentrate, which is reverse osmosis concentrate, and essentially a brine that is left behind because the reverse osmosis removes the contaminants. And it's also the same technology that would be used for, desalinating seawater. But for every sort of 100 gallons that goes in there, 85 gallons of pure water are produced and 15 gallons of concentrate. So we don't add any material, but obviously it's a more, the amount of pollutant is the same, but it's at a higher concentration. So that is something that has to be disposed of safely. At our current facility in San Jose, we blend it with the remaining wastewater and discharge it to the bay. And this approach was allowed in San Jose's treatment plant permit. And we're currently working with both Palo Alto Regional Water Quality Control Plant staff and the regulators on an approach for RO concentrate should this facility be located in Palo Alto. And this is the close-up of our Los Gatos recharge system. Essentially, these are ponds where water can then infiltrate into the groundwater. And this would be where we deliver the purified water, and it will mix with the existing groundwater, and then it can be used from there by well users. And this type of potable reuse is called indirect potable reuse because it has an environmental buffer before the water is actually used. And the site that we're considering in Palo Alto is the former Los Altos treatment plant site that is at the end of San Antonio Road in the Baylands area. And so we have a partnership agreement with Mountain View and Palo Alto that was signed in 2019 that would allow wastewater, that would allow us to purchase wastewater. And the other main components of that agreement are that we are funding a local salt removal facility in Palo Alto for $16 million, meaning their own purification facility that would enhance the purple pipe water and make it more usable for different purposes. And also water supply options for the cities of Palo Alto and Mountain View, should that be needed in the future. And this side, we're doing environmental work, including delineating existing wetlands. We're doing geotechnical work, including field exploration, to see what the conditions are of the site. And the proposed project would provide benefits to the city beyond those that are in the agreement. It would include payments for treated wastewater as well as the land lease. And it will increase the use of treated wastewater to further regional sustainability and climate adaptation goals that we share with the city. So we have the same goals to be adapted to a new climate and have a new resilient water supply. And so this would accomplish those goals. We've been collaborating with Palo Alto staff on outreach related to the project. And as I mentioned, we conduct virtual tours and are also holding informational meetings with interested stakeholders. Our timeline is to have a board decision on the project side sometime this fall or winter, and then award the project next year to a private entity. We're using a public-private partnership model where a private partner would design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the facility, but Valley Water retains ownership. And our procurement process is currently ongoing. Then we would have, once the selection is complete, they would go through design and then have construction likely between 2024 and 2028, and then water delivered to the Los Gatos recharge system. We determined that a draft EIR, that an EIR is needed to satisfy the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, and we released a notice of preparation and held a public scoping meeting back in March. And this draft EIR will evaluate the proposed project's environmental conditions, range of alternatives, the environmental impacts, and then provide mitigation measures. And that should be released sometime this winter, likely in early 2022. And that's all I had. And now I'm open for any questions.
Are there any questions from commissioners? David, we'll start with you. And I don't see any members of the public wishing to speak.
That's correct. There are no members of the public.
Thank you.
I am absolutely amazed that half of the drinking water in the county comes from the county. That means groundwater. That is an amazing percentage. I didn't realize it. The fact that this facility that you're looking at is Los Altos Los Altos treatment plant is very close to existing purple pipe, so that's really a positive for that. Of course, this is a question for Darren, I guess, that would we ever be using that land as to increase the baylands if it weren't used for this facility? Or is this never going to be considered, was this never going to be considered to be added to the baylands?
It is not in any of the plans to make it parkland or add to the baylands at this time. It was discussed in the baylands master plan, and they talked about the property because it's of course adjacent to the baylands, and there are parts of the LATP site that have wetlands in it, pickleweed areas, but there are no discussions at this time of making it parkland. Okay.
And then I have two questions. One is that you said that 5% of water today is treated wastewater, what percentage, and then you would increase it to 10%, what portion of that would be purple pipe non-potable, and what portion of that would be purified water for drinking?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So right now, the 5% is all purple pipe because we don't currently use for drinking. So the about 10 million gallons a day that we're proposing from this facility would be the purified water. So.
And then have you gotten any negative feedback from people drinking purified wastewater in the other facility?
No,
existing facility.
In fact, everyone loves it. And what I neglected to do earlier is I would like to acknowledge that our board vice chair, Gary Kremen, is one of the attendees, and he might like to say a few words as well, if it's possible to promote him to a panelist.
Yes, let me give you a moment here, please.
Thank you.
That's all the questions I had, by the way.
Great. And I just wanted to point out that we do count water conservation as a local supply, basically, because we've done such a good job. So that's actually 15%. So just wanted to
clarify. I guess one other question is, this is versus desalination. Have you considered desalination?
We actually have. We participated in a regional project. Desalination does sound simpler than it actually is. It creates the same brine that I talked about, but more of it because the water is saltier to begin with. And it also uses more energy because to make it drinkable and put it through the RO membranes requires more energy. So at this time, we're focusing on purified wastewater as a more environmentally friendly strategy. But we are looking at desalination because we will likely need every drop that we can get locally. And maybe if I could allow Vice Chair Kremen to say a few words.
Hey everyone, sorry I have a sleeping baby on me, but thanks for the time real quick. So I just want to mention something about the little plant that Valley Water is giving $16 million to the city. That will allow the recycled water, the purple pipe water now to be used on redwoods because as you may know that the current water supply is too salty to be used on redwoods and some more sensitive plants. And additionally, it can be used in Mountain View for cooling towers. They actually sell the recycled water there. So it'll be less strain on Hetch Hetchy, less strain kind of on the Bay Delta in general. So we think that's going to be an early benefit of this project. I think in the next 2 years, it's going to be done. And then we're going to be paying more for wastewater than anyone else has ever done in California. And again, this is going to hopefully reduce or stop the growth of imported water. So here to answer questions on it. It's a good deal for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners' questions for Vice Chair of Valley Water? We appreciate your offspring being with us as well. You're on mute.
He's very tired. He just turned 1, so he's still coming down from the sugar of his party.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
let's go. Thank you for being here. Let's go to Commissioner Brown.
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you for a very informative report.
Thank you very much. Keith?
Yeah, thank you. This is a great project. We should have been doing this 20 years ago, but that's another story. So I have a question for Darren. So last night at council, they talked about the new Life Moves location. And looking at the map, it looks like that's inboard. So this is not a conflict. They both can exist down in that same area.
Yeah, I believe that is the case. And I see my colleague Karen North is ready to help answer that one in more detail.
Hi, Commissioners. This is Karen North. I'm the Acting Assistant Public Works Director for Environmental Services Division. I actually got to participate in the council meeting last night talking about Life Moves. That's in the area of portion C. And that does, if you noticed on the diagram that Kirsten, that's the staging area. So council members, Cormac actually suggested and the whole council approved, we'll need to be working with Valley Water and helping them find another staging area, but they should be able to be next to each other and complementary. It will be a good neighbor actually, because purified water is quiet and clean and doesn't make any smells, unlike our sewage treatment plant. So yes, we've been working with Valley Water for a very long time, and it's exciting for hopefully to see a sustainable water supply. It definitely does support our sustainability climate action plan goals.
Okay, and the second thing is last night they mentioned that this area is in the comp plan classified as a conservation area. So they have to do a comp plan modification. Do we have to do that for this also?
Correct.
Okay.
Especially more of area B is conservation land than the area C that was discussed last night. And so that's part of the work that Kirsten and I have been working with to develop comp plan amendment. So that's all part of the fun challenges of the project.
Okay. And so now there really are kind of, three categories of processed water. You have the regular processed sewage, you have purple pipe, and then you have this. What's the delta cost if you take treated wastewater and you want to convert it to purple pipe? How much does that cost?
For us right now, not much, just because it's an extra step of filtration. So we don't actually even parse that out. It's really our current sewage treatment plant produces very high quality water that's almost purple pipe quality. The only thing we do is we add a little bit of one more step of filtration and another chlorine step for disinfection. The enhanced recycled water that Kirsten and Vice Chair Kremen was alluding to with the salt removal facility at our that we're currently in design for will reduce the total dissolved solids down to around 450. So it'll be adequate for salt sensitive species, and that there will be an increased delta cost because of the energy costs for putting through microfiltration and reverse osmosis. But that's a very small plant. It's around 1.25 million gallons of water per day that will get blended in to produce this enhanced recycled water. Now the cost for purified water is, I'll let Kirsten take that because that is pretty.
So what was the cost
expensive.
of the enhanced?
I don't have the exact dollar amount of what the cost will be. We will be starting to charge our partners, specifically Mountain View, for the enhanced, because it's going to be increased energy cost for using the microfiltration and the reverse osmosis.
Okay. And Kirsten, is it Kirsten or Kirsten?
I listen to anything really.
And how much is the purified water?
So this project is a little more than $500 million, like $600 million, but we are hoping that private sector innovation will lower that cost and therefore any sort of rate impacts. A lot of that is not just the treatment, but also the conveyance to the, building a pipeline can be expensive. So so that's kind of the project cost that we have estimated.
So yeah, I'm trying to get like per gallon. Bottom line I'm trying to get to is, how does this compare to Hetch Hetchy water? If you buy a gallon of Hetch Hetchy or a gallon of this purified water, are they in the same ballpark, or are they still drastically different?
No, they will be different. So the purified water will be more expensive, but with the increased, right now we're paying a lot for water, imported water, because of the drought. And when there's a drought, water gets more expensive. And so as a result, this is an important part of our portfolio, but the way we sort of balance things is by having a portfolio, right? That makes us resilient to have different sources of water, local and imported, as well as purified water and aggressive water conservation. So that's why we sort of look at it as a portfolio approach.
And is this a technology or a scale issue? That if we built a huge plant, would the economies of scale make this competitive, or is it still that we don't have the technology?
It will always be more expensive because it takes a lot of energy. It's not just the building the facility and then the conveyance, it's running it. It just takes a lot of energy to take you know, the pollutants out of the water to make it drinkable. And so there's going to be an ongoing operations and maintenance cost. But but basically what we will be doing is, because we're partnering with a private entity, rather than paying all that capital cost and operation cost, we're paying for the water. And those are the bids we will be receiving once we go out with the request for proposal. They will be giving us a fixed price for the water. And then we can determine whether that is feasible for us or who has the best price. So
it'd be really nice if we could just go in a closed loop and not have to pipe water down from the Sierras and just reuse the wastewater. That may be a dream. And so finally, we pipe this water down to Los Gatos and we put the aquifer down there. Can we do that locally? It seems like it'd be cheaper not to have to pipe it all the way down to Los Gatos, and also it'd help our local water tables.
yeah, so we replenish groundwater in what is called the unconfined zone. So right here in Palo Alto, most of the zone is there's a clay layer above the usable groundwater. There might be shallow groundwater, but that's not what we use for drinking. And the Los Gatos recharge system is the one that has the largest capacity, because you need something with a lot of capacity to be able to take 10 million gallons a day. So it is the closest with the largest capacity. But you're right, you know, there might be better options in the future. They don't exist right now. There is such a thing as direct potable reuse. The regulations aren't out yet. And, you know, groundwater recharge will be important regardless, because right now we use imported water to recharge our groundwater as well as local water supplies. But the pumping exceeds what you know, can be recharged naturally with just rain in our reservoirs. So that imported water that would be freed up could be used somewhere else. And then, yeah, the groundwater, you know, is connected. So even Palo Alto's emergency wells would benefit from having a sustainable groundwater source. But yeah, direct potable is maybe in our future, but not part of this current project. But that is being developed as well. But of course, the state of California wants to be very careful with public health to make sure that when you know, use that kind of water directly, that there aren't any hiccups that might endanger public health.
And I'd just like to add to that. So I believe our team has come to you guys and talked to about the Northwest County Recycle Water Strategic Plan. So we did look at indirect potable reuse and potentially taking water from our wastewater treatment plant, purifying it and injecting it within our basin within Palo Alto. We looked at the groundwater basin in our area, and we're actually have a very good sustainable yield at this point in time. So there isn't really, if we replenish the groundwater, it would just end up surcharging into the bay ultimately. So that's why it makes more sense for it to go down to Rinconada. So we did do that analysis because we figured some people would have questions about that.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lemaire.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. I just have one question. You mentioned wells and you mentioned the emergency wells for Palo Alto. In general, in the Valley area, are there a lot of private entities using wells and drawing groundwater, or is that just in general something that's in reserve for the municipalities?
One of our largest retailers uses a lot of groundwater, and several other retailers do too. So groundwater is definitely used to supply homes and businesses, not in Palo Alto, but in other areas. And then in South County, it is the only source of potable water. So now during the drought, we primarily recharge in South County to make sure that they continue to have water supply. And the groundwater is our largest storage. And so we try to keep it healthy in this.
Do we have a lot of private entities that are trying to access groundwater as well? You know, for example, you have problems in the Central Valley with agriculture and people drilling deeper and deeper wells to access groundwater. Is that anything that we have concerns with private entities?
So Valley Water is also the groundwater management agency for Santa Clara County. So we ensure that groundwater is used sustainably, and we permit any wells that are drilled. So there are private well owners. We have thousands of well owners. Some are retailers and some are private. And in South County, there are agricultural users as well as retailers, and also smaller sort of private wells for home use. So it kind of ranges as to what the wells are for throughout the county, but we make sure that it's used sustainably, and we monitor for subsidence.
Thank you very much.
May I add something to that, Chair? So the reason we don't have the Central Valley problem is we actually know all the well owners, and we tax them. And we tax them up to the level that they're indifferent of using kind of treated water versus well water. So we don't have the same kind of subsidence issue there because it doesn't make economic sense for them.
Okay, thank you very much. Vice Chair Greenfield.
Thank you, Chair. Do I understand correctly that the decision on where to put the advanced water purification facility, or the AWPF, it's down, there's two options available. One is the Los Altos treatment plant location in Palo Alto, and the other is Zanker Road in San Jose?
That is correct. And our board will be making that decision depending on the status of, whether we have all the contracts in place with our wastewater partners.
I'm wondering what the pros and cons are for the two sites, what the potential benefits are to the site that's selected. Is there a potential that down the road, eventually both sites would be utilized, or more than one site would be utilized?
I would think yes. I mean, with climate change, we will need to develop this water further and so it is definitely a potential that both sites may be used. We've only just restarted speaking to the city of San Jose, and we'll see, and our board will make that decision. San Jose has more water than Palo Alto, but we're a little further along with our discussions with Palo Alto. So it's kind of the main difference, I would say.
Thank you. Maybe staff could help me understand how does this process proceed? Is a decision made by staff or city council to avail this site, or?
So we're currently in negotiations with Valley Water. This is a follow-up to the 2019 agreement that Kirsten alluded to, that was between Palo Alto, Mountain View, and Valley Water, which essentially holds up approximately half of our effluent for Valley Water for future purification. And that, in addition, that was also the $16 million contribution to build the salt removal facility at our site. The intent is, we've been working with real estate at staff level, and then we'll be needing to go to council. There's just a lot of logistics, as you can imagine, with this side project that we need to get through in terms of the reverse osmosis concentrate. We've been coordinating with all the regulators to try and make sure that we have a sustainable solution for disposal that is mutually agreed upon, leasing of the land, site evaluations. There's lots of logistics that Kirsten and I and her team are meeting on regularly to try and make sure that we are putting the best solutions forward for both our agencies. And we have a joint recycled water committee meeting that meets approximately quarterly, and Councilmember Cormack and Councilmember Philseth are the two that are representing the council at that point in time on those meetings. And then we will be going to city council for final approval.
And Valley Water is looking to make a site selection this year, or when you say winter, you're going into the first day of quoting seasons is ambiguous, because if winter starts on December 20th, and you've got a few months into the year.
We're hoping as soon as possible. Obviously, with the current drought, developing this one, like one of your commissioners said earlier, this should have happened sooner. So we're trying to go as fast as possible, we will try to bring something to our board in terms of a decision by the end of the year.
But before you do that, you need to have Palo Alto City Council and
Correct.
San Jose
We
give
need to-
give the green light that this is available. Okay. that's
Correct.
fine. And can you just clarify one more time or in more detail, the usage of the purple pipe water versus the higher quality potable water, and so right now there's 5%. The 5% of recycled water all goes to purple pipe. If this goes into place, what will the numbers be?
Well, then we would reach the 10% and we would have 10 million gallons a day of the purified water. So the difference is that purple pipe water can be just the basic wastewater, the way Palo Alto is using it now with some additional steps and additional chlorination, or it can be enhanced by having, as right now our facility in San Jose enhances San Jose's purple pipe water by reducing the salinity, similar to what Palo Alto is doing under, with the funds from this agreement. So it's still not drinkable, but is of a higher quality. And then the next step up is having something that is suitable for groundwater recharge. And then likely direct potable will include additional treatment that will be required when those regulations come to pass.
Okay, so there's purple pipe plus, and there's groundwater recharge, and potable is something in the future. But so,
Right.
but if this goes through, will there be 5% of purple pipe plus and 5% of groundwater recharge, or is all going to the 10% will be all groundwater recharge? I'm just trying to understand that.
Okay, so yeah, right now we count all of the recycled water used in the county. So there are 4 wastewater treatment plants in the county. There's San Jose, the largest, then Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, and the South County, wastewater facility. And all of them with Valley Water support are producing recycled water, purple pipe water right now. And once, this project is implemented, then both San Jose and Palo Alto will have purple pipe water plus our purified water, plus still regular purple pipe water from Sunnyvale and the South County facility. So I don't know all the numbers on the top of my head, but that there will still be a mix of what we count in the 10%.
Will the amount of available purple pipe water for Palo Alto change? Either increase or decrease?
I'll leave that to Karen to answer.
So when we negotiated the agreement with Valley Water, we only negotiated approximately half of the flow of the sewage treatment plant because we anticipated future purple pipe or enhanced purple pipe use within our region. Currently, majority of our water goes to the golf course in Greer Park, and then most of it is utilized in Mountain View. We have part of the Northwest County Recycled Water Strategic Plan. We did look at, it's called Phase 3, looking at going purple pipe up to Stanford Research Park. At this point in time, staff is the cost for the purple pipe versus the volume of water that would be utilized. We're recommending probably to not move that project forward. So we did discuss that at length with council. It's a $40 million pipeline for about a 900 acre feet per year. So it's not a lot of water use.
So I'm still not understanding, will the purple pipe water available that Palo Alto would use or would want to use, will that increase or decrease?
The purple pipe water currently available will increase with the small salt removal facility. It's just we don't have the demand for it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer for your quick question. I apologize. Trying to anticipate what you're going to ask.
And just one last question. Did I hear that in the 2019 partnership agreement that Valley Water is purchasing wastewater from us?
Correct.
That seems like a pretty good deal for us.
So it's the agreement is the first 13 years while Valley Water is trying to figure out if they're going to take water from us. And that's where that $16 million option payment is kind of and what they call it to hold the water. And then after that, it's about $100 an acre foot, but it goes up by inflation. So yes, we negotiated hard for that. There's lots of fun meetings for that one as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the effort on it. It's a very worthy project, and it's certainly a great need that we have today, and even more so in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. I wonder, Council Member Koo, do you have any further comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, well, I don't have any further questions except for to say thank you so much, Kristen, to you and your team for the presentation, for being here this evening. And Karen, thanks for joining us as well. And Vice Chair Gary as well for sitting in. So we really appreciate it. This is an amazing thing for a non-water person to really think about. And we look forward to hearing more and having you guys back and telling us about all of your progress. So thank you so very much for spending some of your evening with us.
I have one more comment, and that is, would you eventually do both sites, Palo Alto and San Jose? Right now you're choosing between one or the other, but would you do both?
It's possible, it depends on, the cost, obviously, and also what happens in the future. But I think our board is very interested in further developing purified water as a local and drought resilient water supply. So.
Yeah, I heard both at some point due to climate change and other things, that there would be two of those at least. So anyhow, thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Chair, I've got the next item. Should I go ahead?
You do. Yes. Thank you so much. And just as we talk about the next item, this has been, first of all, kudos to, as I was reading the report, kudos to the Ad Hoc Committee for all the what ifs, what if this, what if that, what if this, and just pages and pages. So I appreciate that. You have allocated 60 minutes, Darren, for this item.
I'll try to move faster, Chair. I'll be expedient as I can on my presentation, and we're available to answer questions and see if we can get this done.
Thank you.
Right now, I'm going to share my screen if you could see it. So I'll be presenting for a little bit and then deferring to this document and perhaps attachment B as well. This is attachment A. We start with the usual. For those folks that aren't familiar with me, I'm Darren Anderson. I'm with Community Services Department. This is an action item, and staff is recommending that the commission review and approve the draft sidewalk vendor regulations and their justifications. So that would be one piece in attachment A, and to recommend that the city manager approve the updated open space park regulations to add new regulation R141, which is the sidewalk vendors, and that's attachment B. That would take place upon the city council's adoption of a separate sidewalk vendor ordinance. I know that can be a little confusing, so if there's any questions, I'm glad to reiterate that or try to walk you through. But let me continue with the presentation, and please let me know if we have questions. On May 25th, 2021, the commission had reviewed examples of potential regulations for the sidewalk vendors operating in parks and open space. And the commission had established at that meeting an ad hoc committee. In the meeting, I had explained that this is a result of the 2018 State of California approved SB 946, which requires cities and counties to allow sidewalk vendors to operate in their jurisdictions, and that includes parks and open space. But it also allows local governments to regulate the time, place, and manner that the sidewalk vendors in one or more of the following conditions are met. I'm going to read these because these are important, and these are referenced in attachment A, and there are justifications. So again, these are the rationales for excluding or limiting where vendors can operate. One is to directly related to objective health, safety, or welfare concerns, or two, necessary to ensure the public's use and enjoyment of natural resources and recreational opportunities. Three, necessary to prevent the undue concentration of commercial activity that unreasonably interferes with the scenic or natural character of a park. So while vending in Palo Alto parks is allowed, these new regulations are necessary to ensure sanitary, safe, and clean conditions, to protect our wildlife and habitat, and to continue to provide a positive visitor experience. The ad hoc committee and staff met multiple times to develop these draft regulations that define the where and the how that sidewalk vendors are allowed to operate in parks and open space. The draft regulations also include maps that identify the locations where vendors can operate in open space. And I'll explain more when we look at that page. The ad hoc committee and staff also developed these justifications of the regulations. And I'll briefly go over a few examples of the draft regulations and their justifications, as well as those maps. So in attachment A, if we look at this first section on vendors shall not vend in the following areas of Palo Parks. And we have many of these. This one example I'll start with is just parking lots, parking stalls, or designated parking areas. This one refers to that one I had mentioned before, which is about the health and safety. And then we further added justification at the advice of our attorney's office. And the justification for this one is that sidewalk vendors are precluded from parking areas because it would impact the public safety for both drivers and the vendors. Let me move on to look at a map real quick and walk you through this piece. So for open space, it felt more appropriate the more we thought about it and talked about it to show where you could rather than where you could not. It's just easier for the vendor, easier for staff, and anyone that has to enforce this. So let's look at Foothills Nature Preserve. And so we wrote up a justification, basically identifying that, like all these open space preserves, they're in a sensitive area with limited parking, in some cases no parking, like Esther Clark Park. And for this proposed area we're talking about, we would take one parking space. It's one of the least used parking areas, and convert one of these little areas to a vending location. And there would be a sign there that says, you can vend from this spot. And again, it was selected because it'd be the least impactful to park visitors or the habitat. Sidewalk vendors are not permitted further into the preserve because the park mainly consists of unpaved trails for hiking and biking. So this little area on the map, if you could see on the right side, is the Foothills Nature Preserve Interpretive Center. And on the left, the Oak Grove picnic area. And then there are several little pull-out parking spots along the edge of this, what we call the lower turf. So this is the one spot that we would have where people could vend in Foothills. And I'll let the ad hoc chime in a little bit more, but we had this iterative process where I would explain some feedback from the attorney's office. And I just want to make it clear, the ad hoc committee had very much sought to limit the impact on both our park visitors and our wildlife and our natural areas. They had hoped that maybe we could preclude it altogether from open space areas, and in particular Foothills, where it just seems so inappropriate. And the attorney had been very helpful walking us back and forth in answering our questions. But the bottom line was we couldn't eliminate it completely from Foothills Park, but we could limit it severely. And so one little spot within this 1,400-acre preserve in the least impactful area, I think, is a very judicious decision that protects all the things we wanted to protect. And on attachment B, which is those open space park and regulations, it's the same as this document. It just removes the justifications, and I'll pull that up quickly for you to see. So this is one section of attachment E, excuse me, B, which has those regulations. So it's all those things, just removed the justifications. I just want to reiterate that the attorney's office recommended that we go through this process of also adopting these justifications. In case we were challenged on anything, we've got some documentation that we looked at the reasons and justified why we're limiting where we are limiting. And with that, Chair, I think it concludes the staff presentation. I just would like to thank the ad hoc committee who put in a lot of time into thinking about this and met with me multiple times and back and forth and asking good questions and doing research, and certainly welcome their input if they'd like to speak to this before we go to the public. Chair.
Okay, well, can we go first to the ad hoc committee for comments, and then Lam, do we have anybody from the public?
Just one moment, please.
Thank you.
We did not earlier, but let me confirm that here. We do not, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So the ad hoc, starting with Commissioner Brown.
Sure. And thanks to all the other ad hoc committee members and staff and the city attorney's office, wherever you are, for answering all of our many questions. I just wanted to sort of preface this discussion by just outlining a couple things that came up that might be helpful and just hitting those points a little bit harder. The spirit of the legislation is really to enable sidewalk vending. And so that is sort of the general purpose, and that is limits the sort of legal abilities to be able to control in some of those places like the Baylands or Foothills Nature Preserve, where we may have wanted to not see as much or any sidewalk vending. That obviously differs from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. We looked at a lot of other jurisdictions, and some of their city attorney's offices clearly had a different interpretation of the legislation. So this was what our city attorney's office was comfortable with, and we were able to back it up with that justification. I'll also say that Palo Alto is unlike any other city because we have such a diversity in different facilities and the terrain. And so that also led to a lot of these sort of unique specifications and justifications. We also sort of wanted to consider, sort of in the background of all of this, is ease of implementation and the ability to enforce it. We didn't just want to put out regulations into the universe with no sort of ability to really be able to back them up, explain them, show them on a map, make it easy for people to find the information that they need. And then I just wanted to add that this is not the last final word. Sidewalk vendors they do need to get a health permit from the county. So there is a public health aspect of it, and those requirements are significant. And so we did look into that just for our own edification, do a little bit of research on that. So I just wanted to add that, but it was a lot of work, but I think we ended up with a great end product. So I'll turn it off to someone else now.
Great, thank you so much for all of that and those comments. Commissioner Moss.
Yeah, everything that Mandy said is so true. We had to look at dozens of situations, and of course, the most frustrating is the open spaces. The idea of having a vendor selling ice cream cones on the shore of Baranda Lake, or balloons, things like that, were very taxing to the ad hoc, but we did what we had to do and came up with the best we could. But we're definitely not. It's not the last word. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Chair Greenfield.
Thank you. I want to thank the fellow ad hoc members for all of their great contributions. We met many times on this, but I especially want to thank Darren for really guiding this process and taking our input and helping formulate it into what you see in front of you. It was a group effort, but Darren did a lot of work on that, and the input from the city attorney was great as well. What I'll add is one of our considerations. The reality is that resources for enforcement are fairly non-existent in the city, and so that needs to be something that we keep in mind with drafting a policy. It'd be nice if there were more resources available to be available, but we want to keep this as simple as possible. Simple for the public to understand, simple for the vendors to understand, simple for staff to be able to explain, and simple to be able to enforce. So that was a guiding principle in some of the work we were doing. Beyond that, there's a lot of detail in here. I think everyone can appreciate that, and we've spent a fair bit of time on it. But if anybody has any questions on specific details, what our thinking was, be happy to share it with you and look for your input. Thank you.
Okay, good. So we'll go to the other commissioners, but I wanted to ask one question if I could. If I'm a vendor and I get there first, then I get to have that spot. And if there are 2 spots in a park that are designated, then it's first come, first serve in all situations. So are people confident that we're not going to have people being not happy with each other? Not that we would want to have a reservation system. I was just interested in how you thought that was going to work out.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chair. And I think several of the ad hoc members says this is not a done deal. I think our attorney had revisited that point several times with me, saying, get something on the books, evaluate how it goes and readjust. So I think what we do in an example like Foothills, where there's 1 spot, I think we can monitor something like that a little bit easier, where the rangers will get to see, do we have conflicts? Do we have issues? And we adjust as necessary. Some of those areas, I frankly don't think are going to be very popular. I don't think there's a lot of people to sell to in that spot at Foothills. So I don't anticipate it being a really high demand for that, but we'll see. And in other areas like Mitchell Park, we tried to be really judicious about how many we allowed and where we allowed them in such a way that it wouldn't impact, where I would see the likelihood to be higher, that we would have more folks trying to vend there, and the potential for more folks kind of crossing over each other and maybe stepping on each other's toes a little bit. I can say though, right now we don't have any rules on the books for parks, and the state law is in effect, meaning they can come in and vend in that park right now, and we don't have that situation. So I think we'll see what happens and watch and adjust.
I was curious whether we had talked to any other cities about how that would work out, because the vendors that I'm familiar with are pretty anxious to vend their wares. And so, yeah. And then following that question, I didn't see it and I may have missed it, is there a review period built in, or a review, like we're going to wait for a year and review it, or wait 2 years and review it and maybe make some changes? Or is that just an ongoing process? Nothing built into this?
Yeah, I think what's nice is this one is a little easier to implement. These regulations go to the city manager for approval, and they're a little bit faster. So we can make it happen on a faster scale. What I would recommend is staff will just keep reporting back to the commission on how this is going. And then we base our time for renewal on the problems or successes we're seeing.
Okay, great. Let's go to Commissioner Lemaire.
Yes, compliments to all the work that you guys put in. One quick question would be about Foothills Park in particular. Are there any restrictions on open flames that the vendor may use, or any sort of fire danger we have to worry about?
That's a great question. We do have a restriction on wood burning. And in that particular area, we probably wouldn't allow any flames. It's too close to dry vegetation that may or may not even be mowed. So I think we may have to look into that. And we have other regulations on the books. So this is one of many regulations for where they can do, but what they can do. Some of those things apply to every visitor, meaning could you come and set up a barbecue in that site? No, you may not. Barbecues are limited to existing facilities. You can't just come up and set up a barbecue anywhere you want in the park. And I think the same would apply to a vendor. If there was some threat that what they're doing could contribute to wildfire danger, the answer would be no, and we would ask them to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And Commissioner Rectal.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for your work. This looks like an intense project. You talk about you cannot do it on a trail that's less than 8 feet wide. Is trail a generic legal term that covers walks and paths and other things?
Yes, yeah. So we're using that broadly. Pathway, you'll see that one used a lot. I think we define the surfacing that we are considering a trail in that same section. And if not, it's somewhere around here. But essentially what we didn't want, and I'll give you an example of Sarah Wallace Park, a very small park where the trails are only about 5 feet wide. And so anywhere on that pathway, if a vendor were to set up, it's automatic that they're obscuring the pathway for other visitors, and meaning either they or the visitor is going to have to walk off into the vegetation, the plants, and we didn't want that. So that's part of the rationale behind this 8-foot distance. And again, this only pertains to the parkland. So on the sidewalk outside the park, not parkland, this does not pertain. That's where the other ordinance that the police department is pushing forward would sort of take over.
So for example, Mitchell Park, along Meadow, there's a sidewalk right along Meadow. That's not part of the park?
That's correct.
Okay. Another concern I have is trash. Are we going to ensure that each of these sites, like the site in Foothills, will there be a trash can and recycling cans at these locations?
There will not. We're asking the vendors to remove any and all materials that they generate. So the only thing that they could leave, that not they leave behind, but if a customer were to purchase something from them, let's say an ice cream bar, that wrapper may be disposed of by the consumer or park visitor into one of our trash cans, but the vendor may not.
My concern is that if you sell someone you sell someone an ice cream bar and the next trash bin is far away, that may end up being litter. And I think either we need to make sure that wherever in these open space preserves there's sales, there's a nearby trash can, or we require the vendors to provide a trash can. I'm not sure which is the better of the two options, but if you have someone selling stuff in the middle of nowhere, you're asking for that to become litter. What about hours?
Wait, going back to that one,
okay.
we absolutely dealt with that. And we said that they did have to deal with their trash. And
But the way it's written is just their trash. And once they sell that ice cream bar to someone, the wrapper and the stick becomes someone else's property. And I don't think we require any trash can nearby.
right. It was a big issue for us.
I think there's the potential, I think in the vast majority of the areas we're talking about, Baylands, Arrastradero, and all the urban parks, there are ample trash cans available for the clients, the park visitors to dispose of their trash in the nearby area. The one exception would be Foothills, where we don't have a trash can there. And I'm a little leery of adding one just for the vendors, because I think they'll end up using it. We're not there eyeballing them, and it'll get abused. It's also the kind of thing that most of our trash cans are concentrated where we have a lot of people, picnic areas, near restrooms, that kind of thing. So this is sort of a remote area. I prefer to try the pack it in, pack it out. And if we see some problems, we can address it by adding something if necessary.
Okay, fair enough. Hours, is it implied that they only can do this during park hours?
I think we say it out explicitly under the how. Bear with me just a second. Maybe the ad hoc while I'm looking, chime in on that. But we added in that they must be, let's see, here we go. It's permitted only from 9 a.m. to 30 minutes before sunset and vacate the park by sunset. So we were really explicit by making sure that we want to make sure while it's still light, they're cleaning up their site and leaving. So this is before park hours end, before closing.
To clarify that the open space preserve hours extend after sunset.
Okay.
And some urban parks stay open till 10 p.m. So we're saying before sunset.
Okay, I think that's appropriate. And what about alcohol? Is that, I don't see anything in the document about alcohol. Or if, someone wants to go through Mitchell Park and have a bunch of beer in the back of their cooler and sell it, is that possible?
I believe we added, I'm just looking for it. Here's the cannabis tobacco, but I'm pretty sure we've got, let's see.
Wasn't there a city ordinance about alcohol in parks?
There is.
We have several. Some
Some
alcohol is
allow it, some
prohibited.
don't.
Yeah, some's prohibited entirely, some's prohibited unless you have a permit, and some it is allowed.
The alcohol was considered along with the item that has tobacco and cannabis, and I think this city attorney recommended that could be removed because it was superfluous given other code elsewhere.
We were already covered.
But Foothills allows alcohol. And so could someone sell alcohol up there?
Definitely not our intent.
Yeah. Let's see. Just looking to see if we had it anywhere else.
I don't think so.
Okay. We had specifically called out alcohol at one point, and I believe the attorney had suggested changing it. I wonder if this is where we had alcoholic beverage.
I think we did originally have it there.
Yeah. We can add it back in and edit it this live. That's why I've got an editable version if we want to throw that back in. I'm
What does
struggling
the
to
ad hoc
recall.
think?
I thought it was, we have to just do what the city ordinance was on sale of alcohol and not add additional.
Can a vendor sell alcohol? Forget about it in parks, just in general. Maybe that's what the,
Yeah, maybe that's the.
'cause you need, like, if you have a store, you need an alcohol license.
License.
Right. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the rationale.
Okay.
I think that's what it was, but maybe this is something we could leave as is, and with staff has the understanding that when this goes to city council to research that and recommend a change if appropriate, if necessary.
Okay.
Would that be sufficient?
I think so.
Okay, and finally, one last thing. You talk about recreation areas. The skate bowls in Mitchell Park and Brinconada, are those considered recreational areas? And so could someone put up their cart in one of those skate bowls?
It wouldn't, they're not allowed to interrupt or disturb any other recreational activity, I think is what we've defined. So if
I
it
mean,
was.
that's kind of, they're kind of treated as plazas, right? So in some ways, that's a really good spot, but in other ways, if you have someone who wants to do some skating or skateboarding, you're interfering. So I'm not sure. Do we want those areas to become food courts or not?
We had spent a lot of time talking about closeness to any recreational facility, like a soccer field. How close to a soccer field do you allow somebody to vend? They can't be in the way of the action. And then there was something else that we said, that you can't get in the way of people watching it either. So that was one thing, but go to the one that has to do with the playing field. There's a one above it, I think, that has to do with the playing fields and recreational.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
here it is.
specifically call out skate parks as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you can't get in the way of anybody doing what they need to do.
Yeah. The problem is that those two bowls really are just kind of plazas. You know, no one really roller skates in them. They really are just kind of gathering areas. And I don't know, maybe the answer is just don't do anything and see if it becomes a problem and
Yep.
deal with it then.
Which bowls are you talking about, Keith?
Like at Mitchell Park there, that
And Rinconada, the two
Rin-
bowls that sort of act as
Yeah.
a stage sometimes.
yeah, they're more used for events and concerts
Yeah.
and things like that.
You're not talking about the entrance to the skate park.
No,
Not the skateboarding. I'm just talking
Yeah.
about those. They're completely horizontal. They're not, and it's
Yeah.
just used. It's basically a plaza these days, but I think they were constructed for roller skating.
So the question is, would the current policy inhibit vending in the bowls, which certainly I think we would agree we want to do.
Mhm.
In my opinion, they are. I see those bowls used for roller hockey
Mhm.
and Tai Chi on frequent basis, if
Yep.
not every weekday. Granted, it's not all day, but I would certainly consider it a recreation area.
Okay.
I guess a scenario would be if there's a concert going on in the bowl, where would vendors be permitted?
Well, at Rinconada, I can think of some wide, I guess you'd call it part of a pathway where it's really wide and it's near the bowl.
I'm thinking about Mitchell Park. They're not allowed.
They'd probably be on the pathway somewhere on the sides.
No, which is reasonable.
Yeah. And not that far away, but also not close enough to disturb them.
Yeah.
But that's a type of crowd that would be appealing for a vendor to try to reach.
Yeah.
We also had something about special events. Can you find that, Darren?
Sure, let me look. We have other codes too about disturbing permitted activities outside of this. They're in the municipal code. Let's see.
Is the bowl, are the bowl structures?
Yeah, structure, we added that word and I think the attorney had recommended it for its, I guess it just could be applied in a lot of different areas as needed, but
My question is would the bowls be considered structures?
I think it can be, yes. And I would also consider it a recreation area.
Mhm.
So they wouldn't be permitted within 100 feet of a structure. Recreation area isn't included in that particular paragraph.
Right. They just aren't allowed in the recreation area.
Anywhere, somewhere in here, it talks about a special event, special events.
It's towards the end that it's vending's prohibited during any city sponsored or permitted special event. I think it's second to last one.
Thank you.
So in my mind, this is the one that that the vendors are gonna complain about the most. But as you know, when we have the Mayfet parade, at the very end of the parade, and we're in Heritage Park, there are vendors there. And so we're not talking about those vendors. And we're not talking about the Baylands Athletic Center where they have a snack bar. But we are talking about like when they had the music in the park in Rinconada, it would be, I would think vendors would want to be on the outskirts selling to people who want to listen to the music. And I'm trying to remember if the city has vendors that they allow in there today. Does anybody remember? The music in the park at Rinconada?
I don't know.
I think it's sort of on a case-by-case basis on the special event. I'm not sure about the music one, but some special events do and some don't. All depends on the permit.
Right.
So I think what you all have here is good. And after a year or two in use, there can be, if there need to be changes or things that people haven't thought about, or the what ifs or that kind of thing. But I think it's enough to move forward with a motion. Darren, do you have something you can put up?
I do.
Yeah, I have just one very minor change to add. In the third bulleted item up from the end, just above attachment B on page 10, going down.
Oh, the other way?
Yeah, third from the bottom.
Yeah.
Where it starts, vending in park shall be, go up, stop. The section above the highlighted, just add the word a after in. Right there.
Just highlight this so I can get back to it.
That's it.
Great.
Sorry to interrupt, Ann.
No, that's okay. I was just checking. I'm glad you caught that. I'm checking with Darren about putting the a motion up.
Here it is, Chair.
Thank you. I see it. Thank you. Would somebody like to make this motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion that as stated.
In a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And Lon, would you do a vote, please?
Yes, Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Reckdahl.
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
Thank you. And again, great work to both the staff and the ad hoc for all of those meetings and all of that. When this first came to us last spring, I think in late spring, I thought, oh boy, that's going to take a long time. And you guys did a really good job. So congratulations. That's good. Good. Very good.
and the attorneys.
And the attorneys.
We went back and forth with them many times.
I'm sure you did. So we have a tentative agenda for October 26th, 2021. It's hard to believe it's almost the end of the year. Darren, do you have our list?
Yes, I do. We've got if I understand it correctly, we want the racket court policy to come in October for discussion.
Yes.
Did I capture that right, Commissioner Brown?
I think it was discussion. I don't think Adam was ready to bring it forward, but I can check with him, or if you want to check with them. That was my understanding.
Okay, I talked briefly with Adam, but I didn't know if anything had changed in the interim, but I certainly will discuss that with him and Chair and Vice Chair.
Yeah, always if in doubt, you always can make it an action and we don't have to take action, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the racket court one, the city clerk had offered to come speak with the commission, I think on recruitment and perhaps other things too. So we can make a spot for her on the agenda. We've got several others that are in varying states of readiness for October. Yeah. Skate park being one of them. I know the commission was interested in fire safety, although that I believe will be coming back to the council in perhaps late October, early November. So I think that will probably take precedent. We talked about the Friends of Alto Parks and the Rec Foundation returning. That might be a little later, Chair. Were we looking at November, December for that?
Yeah, I think that's November, December, not October.
Okay. We had recycled water line on our list, although that could either be part of the department report or we can invite the Public Works staff to come talk about that in more detail. I'll leave that to the commission to guide. And then the last one on my list was the Measure E site. So again, that's the undedicated 10 acres over at Bixby that is come November available for rededicating should council choose to do so.
Okay. And then there is a chance that we might want to talk about the commission's stance on a city gym.
Got it.
When can we do the Foothills?
The Foothills.
Wrap up?
That's my first one there. Whoops.
I'd like it before I leave. So if we have it, if we have a meeting in December before the 15th, that would be great. If you do it after the 15th, I'd love to see it in November.
Understood. Got it on the list. So Chair, what I would recommend is that we meet soon, talk
And
about
see where we
agenda
are.
and do some planning.
Yep.
And I'll contact you later this week about getting something on the books so we could
Okay,
work
that
on
would
that.
be good. Thank you. Okay,
We
any,
talked about the purple pipe there. Karen answered some of our questions tonight, but I mean, it doesn't have to be long. She can just talk for 5 minutes. But it'd just be really kind of nice to hear straight from the horse's mouth. What are our plans for purple pipe, and where are we going to be extending it? It sounds like we're not going up to the research park, but I think it would be worth a short talk. We don't have to make it in depth, just purple pipe for dummies.
I will ask Karin North about that.
that's good, Keith. Okay, anybody else? Okay, any comments or announcements?
Yes, I think we ought to talk briefly about our plans, our meeting plans for the end of the year. And perhaps we could agree that we will have our December meeting on December 14th. That seems to make sense. To have one extra meeting with this group, and also to avoid meeting on the 21st, when we probably don't want to meet anyway.
So you're saying the 14th, you're suggesting?
That's what I'm suggesting. And I think that's consistent with what we normally do.
Okay, and then what are you thinking? What are we thinking about November, before Thanksgiving then?
November could either be the Tuesday, the 23rd, as would be scheduled, or the 16th. I think personally, I would prefer the 16th. And we need to check with staff for availability of these dates as well before making changes.
Okay, well, when we have our agenda planning meeting, we can look at that as well.
But it would be good to hear briefly from commissioners if they have anything, any thoughts on those dates for quick consideration.
Anybody have any thoughts on those dates right now?
I like them.
I think I would prefer the November 16th as opposed to the 23rd, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Yes, just so.
And I like the December 14th also.
Yep.
Okay, well, that gives us enough to decide. Thank you for bringing that up, Jeff. Any other announcements?
I have one announcement, and that is that the Palo Alto Weekly will be publishing my opinion piece sometime in the next 2 weeks about being a Parks and Rec commissioner, and about encouraging people to put an application in for any of the commissions. So we'll see how that goes.
Good.
When does the movie come out?
Okay, well, thank you all very much for your time and energy and work tonight and this last month, and we'll see you all in a month. We need a motion to adjourn, or can we just adjourn?
I moved that we adjourn.
I figure you would. And I
I second it.
Thank you, everybody.
All in favor? You want to see make sure everybody's in favor of adjournment?
I was assuming that was wrong.
Okay, good night.
All right, good night.